gangstas? Alright, so I've been journaling a bit because I had this conversation with my sister and it like went down this entire mental rabbit hole for me. And I was like, I gotta write this shit down. So I had to write it down before I could come and share it. So like I've been like really feeling this Nietzsche vibe, right? I like polarity and things. I like reading and listening to things that I feel contradict like the mainstream like thought process on things. And so basically I want to talk about objective morality, right? And it's gonna spew into a few different subjects here because as I was writing I was like, wait, and then there's this fact and then there's this, and I'm like, okay. Yes. Anyway, so in the entirety of all that we know and all that we can prove in the universe, um, objective morality only exists within humans, right? We don't see that in nature. We don't see like good and evil, right and wrong, We only see like polarities, I guess, but like you'll see like energies that complement each other, that are compatible with each other versus ones that are not, And then that made me go down this other rabbit hole of understanding what energies actually complement each other and like the reason for that. So that's where I started going on to this other tangent about like, because we're just gonna pretend like there's no objective morality, right? We're gonna just wash that out of our heads for like a moment while I do my little rant, right? And just try to see it from a perspective, okay? So there's no objective morality, right? And so naturally, if you're thinking about energies that are compatible with each other in the entire scheme of nature, right? You'll see that a predator, its energy is complementary to the prey, okay? And that's kind of where you see like these dynamics in relationships of like the narcissist and the empath, and but it goes further than that, It's like the prey have something that the predator is lacking, right? Be it nutrients, be it confidence, whatever the fuck. Be it empathy, like whatever. There's something lacking in the predator, so it goes to the prey to fulfill a need, right? And so energy compatibility is all about filling needs. And where was I? Yeah, and so this creates kind of like a quantum entanglement between predator and prey, right? They will attract each other in that way. And that's why, too, by the way, we should carry ourselves as very like confident and strong and certain, right? Because when you carry yourself in that way, it confuses a predator, right? Because the predator is looking at you like, wait, you're not prey, you're not groveling over here, you're not, begging for your, whatever. And so it confuses the predator, and the predator looks at you as though you are also a predator because that's more their energy, right? And this is why the empath is attracted to the narcissist, right? This is where on the opposite side of this, the other one has a need to be filled by the other, right? And so oftentimes a prey, should it survive, like in the case of like a narcissist empath situation at least, the empath is seeking external validation by somebody who already feels so valid because their energy always comes off that way, right? It comes off as very like, I'm already valid, and whereas the empath typically is unsure of that, right? Seeking that emotional comfort, seeking that validation from the narcissist, right? So that's where those dynamics kind of come into play. And when you like understand it, then you're like, okay. And this is where like sigmas are kind of the anomaly here, you know, the ones that, and they're oftentimes the ones who are alone, right? Because they don't fit, they're not compatible with either energies, right? They're not able to be manipulated, and they have no desire to manipulate. There's nothing to be gained from that because they've already taken care of themselves in that way. So we have, you know, the triangle of how, you know, shit works. So I guess I should have held it up like this. Whatever. Triangle is the same, upside down, right side up, same thing. Okay. Yeah, and then also there's the healer with, you know, the dynamic between the healer and the broken or the sick, right? Because it's not always narcissist empaths, right? There's different dynamics, and there's also levels to toxicity, right? Like, there's a whole thing. That's why I'm like obsessed with psychology because I'm like, why? Why is it like this? So, going further down the rabbit hole, we've got the healer and the sick / broken dynamic, right? And that's because, like, I mean, if you break your leg, who are you going to go to? A doctor, right? If you're feeling, you know, depressed or anxious or whatever, and you have the gumption to, you're going to go to a therapist, right? Or a shaman, or you're going to eat a lot of mushrooms, or probably even take drugs if you have unhealthy coping mechanisms, you know? Because you're seeking medicine, you're seeking healing, you're seeking freedom from the pain or the sickness or whatever, right? The brokenness. Escapism is a good way to put that. Talking makes me thirsty, sorry. So, yeah, and so, you know, the sick and the broken, they need healed, right? Ultimately, that's where I was headed with this, is they need healed, right? And in the same light, there's the opposite side of that where the healer needs to heal, right? They have it like written in their coding, right? It's like they just need, they feel this need to just like heal, right? Like they don't feel right when they're not doing that. They feel out of their element, out of their comfort zone because they're meant for it, right? Like shamans are very specific. That's why there are cultures all over the world, and they all had strong shamanism within each culture, or healing, or, you know, call it witchcraft, call it hoodoo, call it whatever the fuck. In every culture, all around the world, we've had healers, and we've had sick and broken people too, you know, simultaneously, and their energies, they're compatible and they complement each other because of this, right? So, and like I said, we're just taking away the objective morality. There's no good or bad, you know. It's not like we're demonizing one group and praising the other, because they are compatible energies for a reason, right? Like, and both sides have their, you know, the problem within that. So, or, you know, on the opposite side, there's probably like where this becomes a good thing, right? We see the whole opposites attract in everywhere, like with magnets, you know. You have like, you know, negative, positive, draw together, negative, negative, positive, positive, repel each other. We have, I was just about to go into gravity too, but that's a larger conversation for another day. But yeah, we have the Big Bang, right? Matter, antimatter. We have batteries. They have the positive terminal and then the negative ground, and then it's like they complete the cycle of the energy. You know, they create the circuit, and so. And we have it within the masculine, feminine energies as well. And I don't believe that masculine and feminine is subject to genders. Okay, I just don't. I know a lot of women that would be considered masculine and a lot of men that would be considered feminine. I see the dynamic of masculine and feminine even within same-sex couples. Like, and sometimes the balance shifts where even in straight couples where one of them starts out the masculine and the other one's feminine, and then they swap, kind of energies as they like evolve and learn and grow from each other, right? And so because they're seeking they're seeking in the other energy that which they lack. So opposites attract. Sounded like a rap song for a second there, but yeah. And so and so ultimately, if you want to know the key to attraction is to be the polarity to that which you're trying to attract, right? Like, just saying. And if you yourself have a strong balance between the masculine and feminine energies, you're probably going to be one that vibes really well alone, right? Or you might find somebody else who is also very balanced and understands that, like, dynamic, whatever. However that works out for you. Whatever. But yeah, and so within these dynamics, though, of the masculine and feminine energies kind of attracting each other, it's like there is something like the masculine has a lot of logic and reasoning, and like it's very straightforward, right? And sometimes the feminine energy needs a bit more of that because it's more like imaginative, it's more like into the obscure side of things, it's like the artist, if you will. Whereas, like, if I were to put it into school subjects, I'd say the masculine is like science and math, and then like the feminine is like language arts and art in general, right? Or music, like it's more out there. It's not like so straightforward. It's all over the place. And so these energies seek out the differences, right? And something that, also happened as like an evolutionary like survival instinct is that we also fear the unfamiliar, as well as having this attraction to the opposite energy. And I know this sounds a bit contradictory, but it's like something that the ego created to protect us, right? So like in nature, certain groups of animals will stick together. Zebras will hang out with zebras, kind of thing, and there's like this natural segregation that like occurs. And I'm not for segregation, obviously. I'm mixed, like I'm not preaching that, so please don't go there. I'm just going with like a scientific understanding of why like humans in the past, like why war happens. Basically war happens because there's like the first thing that happens is when an animal sees something unfamiliar or different, rather than being curious, it becomes afraid, right? And that's where a negative or toxic reaction to that happens. But a more evolved animal or being or whatever, something that has a bit more understanding of the way that things go, would see the unfamiliar as something to be curious about, right? And I know curiosity killed the cat, whatever. Sometimes you got to like open your mind up though and be like, okay, maybe just because this is different doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, right? Or it's not necessarily going to attack me or whatever, and I don't have to feel, whatever, And we see this from a social level all the way, all the way through the fucking food chain, right? And so there's an energy where the familiar sticks together, right? And it's a survival instinct. But I feel that a lot of people in like today's day and age, a lot of people are rejecting that too, because they've learned from history and like being around other people that like diversity is actually really beneficial. You could even see that on a biological scale, where like biodiversity actually strengthens the gene pool, right? Whereas bio-restriction, like, or whatever, like, if you want to have pure race, or like back in the day when royals would only marry siblings to keep the bloodline pure and shit, like, that actually weakened the bloodline because there was no biodiversity to bring in these extra, like, immune system builders or whatever. Evolution requires different to grow, to evolve, right? And so the more evolved you are, the more curious you are about that which is different. The less evolved you are, the more reactive you are, right? Rather than responsive to the different. And I, for one, have a thing for the obscure. I fucking love that shit, right? The weirder, the better, you know? So, like, I mean, I always told my mom, I was like, I'm gonna run away to the circus, da 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 da. But I could never get in touch with the circus, so that didn't happen. But, like, you know, like, I feel that some people are drawn to the obscure, and I feel that, you know, especially with me being mixed, there's not a lot that's unfamiliar, though, right? That's one kind of benefit I have from being mixed, is that, like, you know, like, I'm as familiar with eating a casserole as I am with eating fry bread, you know, or whatever, you know, collard greens and shit. And it's like, to me, it's all home cooking, you know, and even down to hamburger helper nights or whatever, you know. I had a hamburger helper mom, okay? And, like, so for me, there's not a lot that's unfamiliar to me because I'm very multicultural, right? And this is also a strength that we have in biodiversity. That's why I'm always like, bro, the more biodiversity we have in our society, actually, the better, right? The more we all come together, the more that, like, people migrate around and, you know, connect with different people, right? And come from a place of understanding and maturity and responding rather than reacting and being crazy. I feel like, you know, like, at this point, having war is just a bunch of old people just throwing a tantrum, right, at everyone else's expense, and it's played out, to be honest. It's played out, and it's like, what fucking end? Like, what's gonna be accomplished by any of this? Nothing. It's just a bunch of people acting like a bunch of, like, primal ass, whatever the fuck. So, like, I've seen bonobos more fucking advanced on an emotional intelligence scale than some of the fucking political leaders out there, to be honest, right? I feel like you should have a level of emotional intelligence before you're allowed to do those kinds of jobs, right? Like, maybe even like a degree in psychology and therapy and shit. Like, maybe you should understand the inner workings of, like, the psyche before you pursue something like that, because that's crazy. You know, why do we have toddlers running the show? They're the youngest motherfucking souls out here. The old souls are like, ugh, I already did my wars, I already did my time doing all that shit, you know. Over it. It's all played out. It's all stupid. So where was I? This is why I had to take notes, because, like, I could feel it. I was just all over the fucking place with this. Yeah, everything is frequency, though, man. Like, even matter is a product of, like, frequency or energy accelerated, right? And so, if everything is just energy, then you'll understand that if we're high on our ego, we're going to be met with a lot of blows, right? And by ego, I mean, like, that more primal self. Not necessarily bad, right? I said integrate your egos, right? I said that in a video before. Maybe I'll link that below, actually, because it feels relevant to this rant. But, you know, I'm all about integrating the ego, but I'm not about letting your ego, like, run the show. You know, like, you need a level of emotional intelligence to be like, okay, like, I get it, your feelings are hurt, ego, but, like, we just gotta chill, dog. You know, like, sometimes you gotta check yourself. or you wreck yourself. So if you're high on your ego, you're going to attract a lot of lows because that's the energy you're compatible with in that energy state, right? And if we are humble, we'll attract the highs, right? Because opposites attract, right? And if you think about it, every time you tried to manifest and it didn't work out, why? It's because you were in it's because you're trying to attract it, for one, right? Like it's like I lost that thought right as it was showing up. But yeah, so it's like come back. Oh my gosh. So basically though, like when you're trying to manifest, right? And you're manifesting the opposite of what you want, it's because you haven't done anything to change your own personal energy, right? And that's why I always tell everyone, if you want to attract, or if you want everything to change, you have to change everything, right? That's why, like, cutting your hair causes, like, life to change. That's why, like, changing your style changes the way people react to you, you know, and, like, everything, all across the board. And also, the more you're willing to change and adapt and all that, the better you are at surviving all this matrix, right? Because that's the name of the game. Survival of the fittest. The person who is more adaptable to change. So it's like, rather than trying to do the same old shit, getting the same old results, you've got to switch it up, you know? And especially in your relationships, okay? Like, I'm your tarot reader, guys, and, like, sometimes I see what these relationships are like, and I'm like, bro, why? And, you know, like, how do we get stuck in these loops where we're not, like, transcending them? How do we keep attracting the same kinds of people, or how do we keep attracting the same kinds of scenarios, right? And so if you want to attract new scenarios, if you want different things to happen, it starts in your mind, right? It starts with your self-talk and everything. It's like in the same way that your brain is the boss of your whole body, like it tells you to move and all that. Like, we need to think about it like, if we're telling our brain things like, you're fat, you're stupid, you're dumb, why'd you do that, and you're just feeding it negativity, then what you're doing is you're creating, like, a structure, right, for your brain. And you're sending it messages, you're telling it, this is what we are, right? And so the brain sends those messages down into your body, right? And then it makes it a reality, right? You walk around telling everyone, I'm old. Well, guess what? You're gonna manifest that, okay, if you really want to, you know. It's all on you. I don't give a fuck either way, but it's like, what your brain is telling your body, like, becomes your truth, right? You could be sitting on every diet, on doing all the gym stuff. You could be, like, on all the diet pills, trying to, you know, whatever. But if you keep telling yourself that you have this specific body type and nothing works, then guess what? You're all gonna have that specific body type and nothing's gonna work because your brain is more powerful than all that other shit, right? Like, it is the main one that tells your body what it is, right? It's the main one that says, this is our reality. And, you know, yeah, like, your food and your activity levels matter. However, it starts with your mindset, okay? Because I've seen people who keep saying the same shit over and over, and they could go to the gym for years and years and years and see very little changes, you know? And it's because of what they're telling themselves. And, you know, and I've worked with a lot of people on this stuff, and so I should be a fucking life coach, guys, to be honest. But, you know, that's a lot, so I don't know. But basically, I've already covered all my notes. So now we're just going on with this rant. If we take out our ideas of good, bad, right, wrong, and we look at everything from a purely unbiased perspective, right? We're just looking at the nature of things and the way that things behave, the way that it is. Then we start to see patterns, right? That's what the Fibonacci sequence is all about, understanding the patterns, right? 1, 2 is 3, 2, 3 is 5, 3, 5 is 8, 8, 5 is 13, onward and upwards. And so the more we see these patterns and see the way that it plays out, not only in our own lives, but in everybody else's and throughout nature, then we're able to kind of choose our trajectory, right? We're able to narrow it down and be like, where you start attracting what you want by being compatible with what you're trying to attract, right? Being conscious of it, right? It's living with intention in every level of the way, living with intention, being like, this is the life I want. These are the kind of connections I want. This is what it is, You lay out the blueprint, right? You decide, and then you make yourself compatible with what you're deciding on, and magic. That's witchcraft in a nutshell. That's what I was trying to say. I was like, I'm not good with English when I'm on my rants, okay? Like, my brain is going faster than my words. It's just downloads. It's like, and it always hits at, like, the most random time. I'm like, I have to tell everybody about this. But that's one of the reasons I love this platform, because, like, I get these downloads a lot, and I really do need a place to, like, let this shit out. I'm like, it will eat me alive if I don't let it out. Like I said, healers gotta heal, and so, yeah, and that's also why the more you try to be good, the more you try to, like, acquire, like, peace and serenity in your life, that's where you're going to be met with the most obstacles, right? It's like that old saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. Because, like, when you become a peaceful person, everything around you is going to start being more challenging, more turbulent, more like fuck, because you're, like, shifting your energy to be compatible with whatever, right? Manifestation isn't so much about what you consciously desire, but it's more about what you subconsciously put yourself in, right? You attract based on who you are and how you live and how you speak and all that, right? You have a great influence on your outcomes and your surroundings, and it's actually kind of wild. So, yeah, like, if dating, for example, hasn't worked out for you, maybe try changing it up. Maybe start reacting differently, communicate differently, maybe seek out different types of people, right? And I know that sounds crazy, because I'm always that person who's like, if you're on my social medias at all, you see me, I'll be the first one like, dying alone is great, I love it, but also, I've been thinking about things a lot lately, and it's like, like, about that closed off nature, and is that really very spiritual to be so shut down about things, and it's like, and so, like, that's also, like, a challenge on my journey, because for me, I always felt like, oh, if I'm, like, single or whatever, and I never pursue anything, then, like, I'll just have way more time to devote to my spirituality and to do all this stuff. And what I realized, though, in reality, in all honesty, is that, like, I have the same amount of time no matter what. And if I'm not like pouring my energy into a relationship. I'm pouring my energy into social life, or into, other things. It's like, because like still have all the same time. So, and I also don't want to be like one of those people like, oh, because I'm alone, I have to preach that to everyone. I'm a fucking tarot reader, right? I love love, and I think that y'all deserve like what it is that you desire, right? Whether that's singleness or relationship, whatever you need for wherever you're at in your life. And I'm trying to express that openness, right? Like, I'm just, I'm here for it all. I don't feel like bitter about relationships, and I just feel that, like, there's certain people who attract different things, whatever. And right now I feel like I've been attracting more on that healer aspect, where it's like, because I'm trying to fill that need of healing without turning that into like codependent relationships and things like that, which I know if I were on a lower vibration, I'd be prone to, right? So that's, how it is. And so, and that's also why I feel like knowing yourself, knowing your energy, understanding, your own, like, needs helps you as well to, like, because that awareness really builds your intention, and you're able to be more intentional. You're like, okay, if I understand that I'm attracting these kinds of people because I have this inherent need to like heal people, then I need to just understand that and start taking it on as a spiritual mission rather than trying to create a dynamic that it isn't, and like if the right dynamic were to show up, that's fine. But also I wouldn't want romantic dynamics with people that I'm also healing, right? Like, if that makes sense, or helping to heal, I should say. Teaching to heal themselves. So, there's that, and like doctor patient, professional kind of level shit, and so, yeah, there's that. But I feel that, life is short, and, and if we can make this experience as like fulfilling as possible, if we're able to experience a lot and create a lot of good memories and carry on good energy, because like we don't really have tomorrow promised, right? Like the Reaper can show up any moment and just be like, you know what, it's time to go. You've seen enough, let's go, and then what are you gonna do? You gotta go, right? And like, so with the time that you do have, like, you should at least like be curious about that which is different, right? Be curious about even hearing opposing like thoughts, thoughts and opinions that oppose your belief systems and challenges you to think in a different way. That's, I think Nietzsche is a great one for people who study a lot of Eastern philosophy, because I feel like you need to hear the polarity, right? You need to hear the other side of things. Even if you agree with it or not, it's good to know what the other side is saying, to understand why you choose, right? To know that you're making an educated decision, not just the one that sounds the best, right? Same with, theology, like, spirituality. I don't like calling it religion, because I honestly think organized religion is the furthest thing from spiritual. And I know how that sounds, and I'm sorry for those of you who are into organized religion, but from my personal experience with it, I've seen more Christ-like people who were witches, who were Buddhists, who were, Taoists, who were even Satanists. I've met Satanists that were more Christ-like, than a lot of Christians that I grew up with and a lot of Christians that influenced me growing up. And, like in the church, I saw cafes, bookshops, like, like, why are you having a gift shop and a fucking coffee stand? Didn't Jesus flip tables, dog? Like, did y'all not hear the last time? Like, okay, whatever. And, and then there's the hypocrisy where they'll sit there and they'll preach to you from their pulpit. They'll say, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And then all the while passing around a bowl saying, I need 10% of all y'all's incomes. Like, thank you for showing up. I hope you got your message. It's so... I hate that. Okay, I hate that. I'm gonna be real honest. Like, I'm sorry if that offends. It's not the way, I feel like I like the way Jesus did it, He's like, alright, everyone's hungry, let's split some bread, some fish, let's get some wine up in this place, let's liven it up and talk about real shit. Like, Jesus himself was actually kind of sick, like, one of my favorite stories of Jesus. I've done a video of this, before, in the book of Matthew, right as the New Testament is starting, Jesus is walking with the disciples. They'd been out, like, this is after he gathered them and was like, drop all your shit, let's go, we're fishers now. And so they've been out, they've been spreading the word, spreading anarchy, telling everyone these priests are wrong. Like, learn the truth. They're conning you, So Jesus is going out there doing the good work. And then these priests, right, show up and Jesus and the disciples, they're all out in this cornfield and they're just, they're eating corn and they're exhausted. They had just done all this work, they'd been wandering a while and they're like, we're fucking eating. And the priest walks up and he's like, why are you guys eating on the Sabbath? And this is where Jesus looks at him and he's like, look, gangsta. He said it just like that. He's like, look, gangsta. My disciples do not need to fast when God is with them. And he turns around, and that's when all of a sudden you hear Ice Cube in the background, and they're singing, fuck the ball. I'm kidding. But, no. Sorry, I watched Medea recently, and I'm on that kick. But, no. So Jesus, like, served them, and then goes on about his day, eating corn with the disciples, and, like, and him and John were always, like, like, laughing and joking, and, you see throughout the Bible, like, all this, like, banter between the disciples and Jesus, and even their little bickerings where they were, like, at odds with each other at different points, and, and it was, like, it was real, it was authentic, it was dope, it's, like, this story of, like, the ultimate, like, camaraderie, and then, what a tragedy that St. Paul got nominated to take over after Judas hung himself. That's where, I'm sorry, I think St. Peter's the one that actually betrayed Jesus. Because that's where the war started. That's where the bullshit started. Because then Peter's like, hey, Paul, I have this great idea. You come be a disciple. Even though you were killing Christians that whole fucking time, anyone that followed Jesus, you were killing them. You hated them. But I want you to come and not only be a disciple, but I want you to write 70% of the New Testament. And then St. Paul decides to plagiarize and slap the entire Torah as the Old Testament right in front of Jesus's messages, right? Just enough to get it smushed in the middle. Like, you see, like, the space between Matthew and Acts, the parts that actually had Jesus, it's like this much compared to the rest of the Bible, right? Kind of fucking bullshit, just saying. And And then you understand, if you like actually dive into the stories, that like Jesus was standing up to these doctrines. And so because of St. Paul and St. Peter, we now have all this confusion, because they're like, wait, Jesus said this, but then the Old Testament says this, and then the New Testament says that, because Revelations is like a weird bastardization of the book of Elijah, and it's like whatever the fuck was going on there, and so, like, to me, I like to learn about it before I start having opinions about it, and so I'm glad that I did, because, I honestly just feel like there's a lot of hypocrisy and contradictions. I feel like, in the same way that when Jesus was alive, like, do you think the religious leaders looked at Jesus and was like, that's a holy man? No, they were calling him a winebibber, or a drunk, and a glutton, right? They were saying, and then they said that John the Baptist had demons because he only ate locusts and honey, which agreed, and he didn't drink. But, whatever, he may have had weird food things. He might have been autistic. We don't know. He was just out there eating bugs. He liked it. And, like, why would that be a problem, Because he doesn't want to partake in the drinking and the eating of the meat and all that, He was like, I have another way. And Jesus never presented himself as perfect. Everybody else did, though, right? Everybody else decided to, like, glamorize him and put him in this image, but, like, Jesus himself was like, bro, you're not defiled by what enters your mouth, you're defiled by what leaves it, right? Like, so, like, drinking wine, who fucking cares, man, And so, I don't know, I feel like Jesus is the most misunderstood and most popular motherfucker that's ever existed, right? Like, the more I read, I'm like, am I the only one who sees this? Like, the hermetic seals, like, have just blinded y'all all this time? Like, I just don't understand, how anyone could read all those contradicting messages and not start putting the messages together and start understanding what's happening. And, like, it even says it. It says it. It says what St. Paul did. He's the reason that Mary Magdalene was not called the 13th disciple, right? He is the reason that there are messages of misogyny and pro-slavery and rape and murder and bigotry on all accounts, right? Like, hella homophobic, all that shit. Thank you, St. Paul, right? Like, I have a 2,000-year-old grudge, okay? Because of St. Paul, like, he was not a good fucking guy, and if I met him in this life, he's gonna get it. Better watch out. No, okay, but, yeah, so, see what I mean? Like, I started out with objective morality and ended up here, but, I feel that we wouldn't have such fucked up ideas on morality if it weren't for these doctrines, right? These false doctrines. The ones that teach us to hate each other, the ones that teach us division, the ones that create hierarchies, the ones that aren't actually fucking true. They might have some truth riddled in there, right? But the best lies do, right? The best lies are riddled with truth. And that's how they keep you on the line, right? So, yeah. And so, my quest is to show you how nature really reflects us and how we reflect nature, and we're not out of alignment with our nature when we have like desires and urges and things like that. It doesn't make us bad people. It's what we're energetically complemented with, if that makes sense, or compatible with, right? You're energetically compatible with the things that you desire, and you're more so when you're to the point of being able to, manifest that in your life. Also, be careful what you manifest, right? Like, you don't know. Um, and, I always thought it was super funny that, like, a lot of people that, like, I've dated or been close to were not, like, super spiritual people. They're jocks and nerds and stuff, right? And I was always, like, an esoteric nerd, right? Like, a Yu-Gi-Oh nerd and shit. So here I am. But so the people I've attracted into my life have been very opposite, and because of that, like, I've been able to learn and grow and evolve, right? In the same way that biodiversity helps us to evolve, cultural diversity helps us to evolve. The curiosity of that which is different helps us to evolve, right? And so that's a big message to take away. Alright, so this is pretty much what I have for you. I'm gonna get on with everything else. Probably have more rants for you later. Namaste. I love you guys. I'll see you later.